Hi friends, here is chapter 15 of Thief Lord. Victor was standing just a few yards away, trying to look inconspicuous. He had turned his back to the shop that the children had just gone to, but he was keeping an eye on the entrance by watching the reflection in the window of the shop opposite. What are they up to in there? Victor wondered, while he shifted impatiently from one foot to the other. Are they buying one of those plastic fans, or does their leader want to buy another mask for his face? Then Victor saw the girl step out of the shop. Hornet, Bo called at her. She glanced around, acting very casual, checking out the gondolas by the bridge, and then started toward them. Hardly a minute later, the black boy left the shop. He was carrying a large basket and walked off in the exact opposite direction. By the devil and his pestilences, what is going on now? Why are they all splitting up? Well, it doesn't matter. My two suspects are still in the shop. Victor comforted himself. He adjusted his sunglasses. Next came the hedgehog. He skipped off towards the cake shop, which, a few steps away, filled the alley with its wonderful baking smells. The boy pressed his nose against the window. Perhaps all the others had to go home now and do their homework or have lunch. Perhaps Bo's story about all of his friends living together in a movie theater had just been a fantasy after all. Nothing more. It made it made it a lot easier for Victor, of course. The others could go home eventually, one by one, leaving Prosper and Bo behind. I live in a movie theater with all my friends. Pah! You had to hand it to the boy. He knew how to spin a good story. Amused, Victor looked at the reflection of his face in the window. Hold on. Who was that coming out of the shop? Another one of those kids? Which one was missing? The masked one, of course. But hadn't he looked different earlier? Victor frowned. The boy stood in front of the shop door for a moment, looked around with a face that gave nothing away, and then kneeled down to tie his shoelaces. He straightened himself again, blinked into the sun, and strolled, whistling toward the gondolier, who were still out trying to get the next customers at the base of the bridge. Gondola! Gondola! They cried out loudly. Victor would far rather have gone for a ride in one of those boats than stand around here. The cushions were so soft, and the gentle rocking of the boat along the canals always made him so wonderfully sleepy. All one could hear was the water splashing, slurping, and gulping against the sides. And then there was the gentle whisper of the city. Victor closed his eyes and sighed for a second before opening them wide with a jolt. "Excusey," a voice said beside him. The boy who had been looking at the gondolas was now standing in front of him, grinning broadly. He had a very thin face and very dark, almost black eyes. Victor took off his sunglasses to take a closer look. Was this the boy in the mask who had strutted like a cockerel ahead of the others in St. Mark's Square? "Can you tell me the time, please?" the boy said, taking a very close look at Victor's checkered sweater. Victor frowned as he looked at his watch. 4:16, he grunted. The boy nodded. "Thank you. That's a nice watch. Does it also show the time on the moon?" His dark eyes sparkled with laughter as he looked at Victor. What does he want from me? Victor wondered. He's definitely up to something. He cast a quick glance toward the souvenir shop and saw with relief that Prosper and Bo were still standing by the window. They were gazing at the trash on display as seriously as if it were treasure from the Doge's palace. Are you English?" "No, I'm an Eskimo. Can't you tell?" Victor growled. He stroked his face, thin beard, and sensed that it was beginning to develop a life of its own. An Eskimo? That's interesting. They don't stray into the city too often, the boy said before turning around and strolling away. Victor just stood there, tugging on his beard. "Darn it," he muttered. He turned quickly to pluck the stupid thing from his lip. Then he saw that the girl was slipping back into the shop, and even the hedgehog was no longer glued to the window of the pasteria. But the boy with the black eyes was nowhere to be seen. They can't possibly have recognized me, Victor thought. It's impossible. Then, to his bafflement, he saw the three of them come out of the souvenir shop in perfect formation, with Prosper and Bo right in the middle. None of them glanced at him, but they all giggled and whispered, and Victor had the distinct feeling that they were laughing at him. In no hurry whatsoever, they all strolled away in the direction of the Rialto. Keeping out of sight, Victor followed them at a safe distance, but he had no practice in child surveillance, and, as he soon discovered, it was a very difficult task. They were so small and so much easier to overlook, and they were also so quick. The alley they were walking down was very long and twisting, so it was just as well that from time to time one of the children turned and looked toward him. Victor tried to stay alert, but suddenly 2 large ladies stepped out of the cafe, laughing and arguing. They blocked the alley so that Victor had to push past their large behinds. He squeezed his way free and ran straight into the girl, the same girl who had been so engrossed in her book by the fountain, Bo had called her Hornet. She stared at him with hostile gray eyes, and before Victor realized what she was doing, she threw herself against him and lashed out at his checkered sweater, screaming at the top of her voice, "Let me go, you pig! No, I don't want to come with you, no!" Victor was horrified. For a moment, he just stood and stared down at her. Then he tried to push her away, but she wouldn't let go of his jacket and kept thrashing at his chest. The people around them turned and stared at him and at the screaming girl. "I haven't done anything," Victor cried, dumbfounded. "I've done nothing, absolutely nothing." To his horror, a dog jumped out at him, barking loudly, and in the meantime, the other children simply disappeared into the side alley. "Stop!" Victor yelled. "Stop, you rotten little devils!" He tried again to free himself from the girl, but then something hit the back of his head with such force that he began to stagger. Before he knew it, the 2 large ladies were all over him, swinging their massive handbags at his head. Outraged, Victor bellowed back at him, holding his arms above his head. But the girl kept screaming and the ladies kept thrashing and the dog kept growling, sinking its teeth into Victor's jacket. The crowd around him grew ever more angry. "They're going to crush me," Victor thought. He couldn't believe it. He felt someone tearing a button off his jacket. Just as he was about to drop to his knees, the carabinier fought his way through and pulled him up once again. All around him, 100 voices shouted simultaneously, trying to explain what had caused this mayhem. And then Victor realized that the girl had gone, vanished into thin air, just like the 4 of her friends.